The council laughed at Earth, then watched the galaxy fall. Part 1: The Dismissal. The ship called the Horizon moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was not a beautiful ship. It was not fast. It was held together by the hopes of 8 billion people on a small blue planet called Earth. Captain Park stood at the window of the bridge and watched the stars pass by. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. 3 months. They had traveled for 3 months to reach this place. Prime. The neutral world where all the great species of the galaxy gathered to make decisions. The Galactic Assembly had read about it in the files they received from passing traders. She had seen pictures of the massive chamber where representatives from 100 worlds sat in floating chairs, debating the future of civilizations. And now, Earth was going to ask for a seat at that table. Ambassador Lee walked onto the bridge. He was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 40 years as a diplomat on Earth, solving problems between nations that hated each other. He had brought peace to places that had known only war. But this was different. This was not Earth. Out here, humanity was nothing. A baby species taking its first steps into a galaxy that had been walking for millions of years. "Are you ready?" asked him. Smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I have been ready my whole life for something like this, but I do not think they are ready for us." The ship entered the orbit of Prime. Below them, the planet glowed with the lights of 1,000 cities. Ships of every shape and size moved around them. Some were made of metal, some were made of crystal, some seemed to be alive, breathing and pulsing like giant creatures. The horizon looked like a toy next to them, a child's drawing compared to masterpieces. They landed at the designated port. The delegation was small, 12 humans in their best clothes, carrying documents and data files and a small gift from Earth. A bottle of wine from a vineyard in France that had been making wine for 300 years. It seemed foolish now. What did ancient wine mean to beings who had conquered the stars before humans learned to make fire? The walk to the assembly chamber was long. The corridors were filled with aliens of every kind. Some had scales, some had feathers, some floated in the air, some walked on dozens of legs, and all of them stopped to look at the humans. Saw curiosity in some eyes, amusement in others, and in many she saw nothing at all. They did not care. Humans were not worth their attention. The chamber itself was beyond anything had imagined. It was a sphere, half a kilometer wide, with floating platforms arranged in circles around a central stage. Each platform held the representatives of a different species. There were hundreds of them. The air was filled with the sound of 1,000 languages being translated by machines that hung like invisible clouds. Speaker stood at the center. He was tall, 3 meters at least, and his body was made of living crystal that shifted colors as he moved. He was the head of the Galactic Council, chosen by vote every century. His voice echoed through the chamber like music. The delegation from the planet called Earth may approach. Lee walked to the center stage, and 3 guards followed behind him. She kept her face calm, but inside she was memorizing everything, every face, every reaction, every whisper. Bowed respectfully. "Honored Speaker, honored members of the Galactic Council, I am Lee, Ambassador of Earth. I bring greetings from the 8 billion souls of Mai. We come in peace. We come in friendship. And we come with a humble request to join this great assembly as equal members." Silence. Then a sound that would never forget, laughter. It started from one platform, the Dominion, according to the files. Their representative was ancient, his scales gray with age, and he laughed first and then others joined. The sound spread through the chamber like a wave. Speaker raised a hand and the laughter slowly died. But the damage was done. And spoke. His voice was translated into perfect English by the machines, but the contempt needed no translation. "Equal members, you, look at yourselves. One planet, one tiny, fragile planet at the edge of nowhere. Your species is barely 10,000 years old. You have no colonies, no resources, no technology worth mentioning. Your bodies are weak. You are short. You are prey animals who somehow escaped your predators long enough to build ships." He leaned forward and his old eyes were cold. "Do you know how many species have come to this chamber asking for membership? Thousands. Do you know how many we have accepted in the last 1,000,000 years? 12. 12 species who proved they were worthy, who proved they could contribute, who proved they would survive." He waved a clawed hand dismissively. "You will be forgotten within a century. Your planet will be a footnote in the history of this galaxy. Go home, little humans. Go home and enjoy the short time you have left." Lee did not move. He did not react. He simply stood there, his hands folded in front of him, his face as calm as still water. "I understand," he said quietly. "May I ask, what would make us worthy?" More laughter. Speaker answered not unkindly. "Survive, grow, prove that you are more than what you appear to be. In 1,000 years perhaps you may return, if you still exist." The vote was quick, unanimous rejection. Not a single voice spoke in humanity's favor, not one. The delegation walked back through the corridors in silence. The aliens watched them go. Some shook their heads, some turned away. One small creature with many eyes approached and spoke in broken English. "Sorry, they are always like this. Do not feel bad, many have been rejected. You are not alone." Looked at the creature. "Thank you," she said, but she did not feel grateful. She felt something else, something that burned in her chest like a fire. On the ship, as they prepared to leave, Ambassador Lee sat alone in his quarters. He held the bottle of wine in his hands. He had not given it to them. He had not had the chance. Knocked on his door and entered. "Ambassador, are you all right?" Looked up, his calm face had not changed, but something in his eyes was different, harder. "I memorized every face," he said, "every laugh, every word. I will remember this day until I die, and I will make sure that Earth remembers too." Sat down across from him. "What do we do now?" Was quiet for a long moment, then he spoke. "We go home, we tell our people what happened, and then we work. We work harder than any species in this galaxy has ever worked. We build, we grow, we become something that they cannot ignore. And one day, Captain, they will not laugh." The horizon left Prime and began its long journey home. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business. The humans were already forgotten. A small, amusing interruption in the endless work of running a galaxy. But on that small ship, moving slowly through the stars, 12 humans made a promise. Not with words, not with oaths, just with the look in their eyes as they watched the galaxy fade behind them. They would return. And when they did, no one would laugh. The Council laughed at Earth, then watched the galaxy fall. Part 2, The Shadow Rising. 50 years passed like water through fingers. The galaxy moved on. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought over planets that humans had never heard of. Trade routes shifted. New species were discovered. Old species died out. The Galactic Council continued its endless meetings, its endless debates, its endless self-importance. And Earth went silent. No messages, no trade requests, no diplomatic missions. The humans had returned to their small blue planet and closed their doors. At first, some council members were curious. Then they were amused. Then they simply forgot. Earth was not important enough to remember. But rumors began to spread. Trader was not a brave creature. He was small, covered in soft brown fur, with large eyes that could see in darkness. His species, they were merchants. They bought and sold across the galaxy, going places that others would not go, dealing with species that others feared, and had done something that very few traders had done. He had traded with the humans. It started by accident. His ship had engine problems near the edge of human space. He sent out a distress signal expecting nothing, but a ship had come, a human ship. It was not like the primitive vessel that had visited Prime 50 years ago. It was sleek, black, silent. It moved through space like a ghost. The The humans had fixed his engine. They had given him food and water, and they had asked him one question: "Do you want to trade?" Had said yes. Over the next 20 years, he made dozens of trips to human space. Each time he was amazed. The humans were building, not slowly like other species, fast, so fast that it should have been impossible. They had colonized 40 worlds in 50 years. 40 worlds. The Dominion had taken 10,000 years to colonize that many. And their technology did not understand how it worked. Their ships folded space like paper. Their weapons made matter simply stop existing. Their soldiers wore armor that could stop plasma bolts like rain on stone. But the most frightening thing was not the technology. It was the humans themselves. They were focused, every single one of them. Workers, soldiers, scientists, farmers, all of them had the same look in their eyes, the same fire. They were working towards something, building towards something, and they never stopped. Had asked one of them once, a young woman named who worked in something called Project Prometheus. "Why?" he had asked. "Why do you work so hard?" Had smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Because they laughed," she said, "and we will make sure they never laugh again." Now stood in the Galactic Assembly Chamber, trembling under the gaze of 100 species. He had been summoned. The council had heard the rumors and they wanted answers. And was still alive. Impossibly old now, his scales almost white but his eyes still sharp. He was the one asking the questions. "You claim to have traded with the humans," and said, "Tell us what you saw." Swallowed, honored I saw many things. Their space is large now, much larger than before. They have ships that I cannot explain. Ships that appear from nothing and disappear the same way. Ships that our sensors cannot see. Murmurs spread through the chamber. "Continue," speaker said. "They have weapons," said. "Weapons that do not burn or explode. They simply unmake things. I saw them test one. A small device no larger than my hand. It touched an asteroid and the asteroid was gone, not destroyed, gone, like it had never existed." The murmurs grew louder. "And their people," continued. "They are different now, stronger, faster. They have changed their own bodies somehow. A human soldier looked at me with eyes that saw everything. He knew I was afraid before I knew it myself." And waved a claw dismissively. "Stories, exaggerations from a frightened trader. The humans were nothing 50 years ago. They cannot have changed so much." "With respect," said, his voice shaking, "I am not exaggerating. I am telling you less than what I saw because I am afraid you will not believe me if I tell you everything." Silence fell over the chamber. Speaker spoke carefully. "We sent observation ships to human space to see for ourselves. None of them returned." Nodded. "I know, the humans told me. They said the ships entered their space without permission. They said they dealt with them." "Dealt with them how?" and demanded. "I do not know, the humans did not say, and I did not ask." The council debated for hours after left. Some wanted to send a fleet. Some wanted to try diplomacy. Some wanted to ignore the problem and hope it went away. And spoke loudly against any action. "They are still primitives," he insisted, "playing with toys they do not understand. They found some crashed ship, some ancient technology, and they think they are powerful now. It means nothing. When they face a real enemy, they will crumble." But not everyone agreed. A young from a minor species stood up. Her name was, and her people had been laughed at once, just like the humans. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "we should send a message, an apology, an invitation to talk." And laughed, the same laugh he had laughed 50 years ago. "Apologize to prey animals. Never. If they want to talk to us, they can come here and beg." The vote went in Anne's favor. No message would be sent. No apology. The humans would be ignored until they proved themselves worthy of attention. Far away, in a secret facility deep under the surface of Earth's moon, Doctor watched the council's debate through intercepted signals. She was old now, her hair silver, but her mind was sharper than ever. Behind her stood Admiral, commander of Earth's defense fleet. "They still think we are nothing," said. Nodded. "Good, let them think that, it gives us more time." "How much longer do we need?" Smiled. It was the same smile that had given years ago. Not happy, determined. "Not long, the fleet is ready. The weapons are ready, the people are ready. We have been waiting for 50 years, we can wait a little longer." Turned back to the screen, and was speaking again, saying something about the natural order of the galaxy and the place of lesser species. "I remember his face," said softly. "I was not born when Ambassador Lee went to that chamber, but I grew up hearing the story. Every child on Earth heard it, every school taught it. We remember every laugh, every word." She turned off the screen. "And when the time comes, we will answer." On the edge of the galaxy, human patrol ships moved silently through the darkness. They watched. They waited. They were ready for something, though no one in the council knew what. The galaxy continued its business, unaware that everything was about to change. Unaware that the species they had dismissed as prey had become something else entirely. Not predators, something worse. Protectors, protectors who remembered, protectors who were preparing. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would need them. The council laughed at Earth, then watched the galaxy fall. Part 3: The Swarm Arrives. The darkness between galaxies was not empty. It only looked empty. Deep in that endless black something stirred, something ancient, something hungry. They had many names across the galaxy. The old species called them the Devourers. The younger species called them the End, but most simply called them Death. They were not one creature. They were billions, trillions. A swarm so vast that it blocked out the light of stars. Their ships were not made of metal or crystal. They were alive. Giant creatures that breathed in the cold of space, that fed on planets and stars, that had been sleeping for 10 million years. And now they were awake. The first warning came from the outer rim. A colony world of the Dominion sent a distress signal, then silence. Ships were sent to investigate. They found nothing. The planet was gone, not destroyed, not burned, gone. The rock itself had been consumed, eaten down to nothing, leaving only empty space where a world had been. Then another colony fell, and another, and another. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Speaker's crystal body flickered with colors of fear and confusion. Reports came in from across the galaxy. The Devourers were moving toward the core worlds. They consumed everything in their path. Ships, stations, planets, stars. Nothing could stop them. "We must unite our fleets," said, "all of us together." For once, no one argued. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council was the largest military force ever assembled. 10,000 warships from 12 species, battleships the size of small moons, fighters that moved at the speed of light, weapons that could crack planets in half. They gathered at the system, directly in the path of the swarm. Captain Shin watched from far away. His ship, the Silent Thunder, was a human stealth vessel. It was small, barely visible, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. His mission was simple: observe and report, nothing more. He had seen the Council's fleet arrive. He had been impressed. So many ships, so much power. Surely they could stop the Devourers. Then the swarm came. Had read the reports. He had seen the images, but nothing had prepared him for this. The swarm filled space like a living cloud. Billions of creatures, each one the size of a city, moving together as one mind. They did not have formation. They did not need one. They simply were. The battle began. The Council's fleet opened fire. Plasma beams, nuclear missiles, gravity bombs. The weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds, that had ended 100 wars, that had made the great empires of the galaxy tremble with fear. The Devourers did not slow down. The weapons killed millions of them. Millions, but there were billions more. And worse, they learned. The first wave died to plasma beams. The second wave had shields that stopped plasma. The first wave died to nuclear fire. The third wave absorbed the radiation and grew stronger. Every weapon, every tactic, every trick, the Devourers adapted within minutes. Watch the Council's fleet die. Ships that had taken centuries to build were torn apart in seconds. Fighters were swallowed whole. Battleships were consumed from the inside, their crews screaming as the swarm ate through hull and flesh and bone. In 3 hours, 10,000 ships became wreckage, became food. The distress signals were terrible, voices crying out in 100 languages, begging for help that would never come. Then silence. His hands shook as he transmitted the recording back to Earth. Every detail, every death, every moment of horror. High Commander received the transmission in her command center on Earth's moon. She was young for her position, only 45, but she had earned it through brilliance and dedication. She watched the battle 3 times, her face calm, her mind racing. They adapt, she said to herself. They learn from what kills them. Her staff waited nervously. But they have a pattern, continued. Look here. When they adapt, there is a delay, a fraction of a second. Their central mind, this hive voice, it processes the information and sends new instructions. If we can interrupt that signal. She paused. We can hurt them, really hurt them. Admiral entered the room. He was old now, his hair completely white, but his back was straight and his eyes were sharp. The Council has sent a message, he said. They are asking for help, begging actually. Turned to face him, the same Council that laughed at us. The same. Silence filled the room. Ambassador Lee is watching the message, continued. He wants to speak with you. They found Lee in his private quarters. He was ancient now, over 100 years old, kept alive by human medicine that would have seemed like magic to the Council. He sat in a chair by the window, looking at the stars. I heard the message, said without turning, speaker himself, asking for the help of the brave and resourceful people of Earth. Interesting choice of words. Do we answer? Asked. Was quiet for a long time. 50 years ago, he said finally, I stood in their chamber, I offered them friendship, I offered them peace, and they laughed and called us prey animals. He said we would be forgotten. He turned to face them. His eyes were old, but the fire in them was not. Part of me wants to let them burn. Part of me wants to watch them feel what we felt, helpless, alone, dismissed. He stood up slowly, painfully. But that is not who we are. That is not what we built. We did not spend 50 years becoming strong just for revenge. We became strong so that we could protect, so that we could save, even those who hurt us. He looked at, tell the fleet to prepare, tell Commander to find a way to stop those creatures. Nodded, and the Council smiled. It was a tired smile, but real. Tell them help is coming, tell them Earth remembers, and tell them, he paused, tell them we forgive them, because that is what makes us human. Across the galaxy, the Devourers continued their march toward the core worlds. Species that had lived for millions of years saw death approaching. And, ancient and afraid, watched the reports with eyes that had finally lost their contempt. We should have listened, he whispered to himself. We should have listened to the little humans. But it was too late for regret. The swarm was coming. And only one hope remained. The Council laughed at Earth, then watched the galaxy fall. Part 4, Humanity Answers. The corridor was the last line of defense. If the Devourers passed through it, nothing could stop them from reaching the core worlds. Billions of lives on hundreds of planets would be consumed. Civilizations that had stood for millions of years would end. The survivors of the Council's fleet gathered there. 300 ships, damaged and afraid, crewed by soldiers who had seen their friends die. They knew they could not win. They knew they were going to die, but they had nowhere else to go. Speaker stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the swarm approach in the distance. It was like watching a storm made of nightmares. He had lived for 2,000 years. He had seen wars and plagues and disasters, but he had never seen anything like this. "How long?" he asked. 6 hours, his navigator replied, "maybe less." Closed his eyes, he thought of his family. The crystal gardens where he had played as a child, all of it would be gone soon. Then his sensor officer shouted, "Speaker, ships appearing behind us." Turned, the devourers, they flanked us. "No, speaker, I don't know what these are." Space itself seemed to fold open, like paper being torn, and through that tear came ships. 2,000 of them. They were black, completely black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They were shaped like blades, sleek and sharp, moving without any visible engines. They made no sound on the sensors. They simply appeared, filled the space behind the Council's fleet, and stopped. "What are those?" whispered. His communications officer looked up with wide eyes. "We're receiving a transmission. It's in English." A voice filled the bridge, female, calm, strong. "This is Fleet Admiral of the Earth Defense Force. We have received your request for assistance. Earth has answered." Could not speak, he could not move. "Speaker," the voice continued, "Earth remembers the laughter. We remember the dismissal. We remember every word spoken in your chamber 50 years ago, but we also remember what we chose to become. Not conquerors, not destroyers, protectors." A pause. "Stand aside or stand with us. The choice is yours, but we are going to stop these creatures. Today, here, now." Slowly, the Council's fleet moved aside. The human ships passed through them like ghosts, silent, perfect, moving as one body, as if controlled by a single mind. And at the front of the formation was the largest ship had ever seen. It was not just a warship. It was a statement, a promise. On that flagship, Fleet Admiral stood at the command center. She was 50 years old, tall and calm, with eyes that had seen too much and feared nothing. Around her, hundreds of officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Doctor stood beside her. The old scientist was fragile now, kept alive by machines, but her mind was still sharp. She had spent her whole life building the weapon they were about to use. She would not miss this moment. "Prometheus fire is ready," said. Nodded. "We wait for the right moment. Let them come closer." Lieutenant Myra Nam's voice came through the communication system. She was the commander of the fighter squadrons, waiting in her ship with 10,000 others. "Admiral, fighters are ready. Just give the word." "Hold," said. "Let them think we're scared. Let them underestimate us." The swarm approached. Billions of creatures, each one hungry, each one deadly. They had consumed the greatest fleet in the galaxy. These new ships would be no different. The high voice spoke. It was not a sound, it was a feeling, a pressure in the mind. Every human in the fleet heard it. "New prey, different, interesting. You will be CONSUMED. You will join US." Smiled. "You can hear me," she said out loud. "We hear all, we know all. We have consumed 1,000 species. You are nothing." "Is that what you think?" She pressed a button on her console. "All ships attack pattern Omega. Fighters launch. Show them what nothing looks like." The human fleet moved. To the Council survivors watching from behind, it was like watching a dance. The human ships did not fight like any military they had ever seen. They moved together, anticipated each other, covered each other. They seemed to know what the Devourers would do before the Devourers did it. Lieutenant Myra Nam led her squadron through the swarm like a blade through water. Her ship twisted and turned in ways that should have been impossible. She fired weapons that did not flash or explode. They simply touched the creatures, and the creatures stopped existing. "They're adapting," her wingman shouted. "They're getting faster." "So are we," Myra replied. "Pattern shift 7 now." Her entire squadron changed formation in an instant, not because she ordered it, because they all thought it at the same time. Human neural networks connecting every pilot to every other pilot. They fought as one mind. But the swarm was learning too. They changed their tactics. They sacrificed millions to find weaknesses. They pressed forward with numbers that seemed endless. And then the hive voice spoke again. Your weapons are strong, but we are stronger. We will adapt. We will overcome. We always do. The swarm focused on the human flagship. Billions of creatures, all moving toward one target. They would destroy the command ship and break the human formation. Watch them come, she said. Now. Doctor touched a control panel with shaking fingers. Prometheus fire. The weapon she had spent 50 years building. The weapon that should not exist. Firing, she whispered. A light emerged from the flagship. Not bright, not dramatic, just a gentle glow that spread outward in a sphere. When it touched the devourers, they simply stopped. Their atomic bonds, the force that held their matter together, dissolved. They did not burn, they did not explode, they just ended, returned to atoms, returned to nothing. Millions of creatures, gone in an instant. The swarm stopped moving. We do not understand. What are you? Stood up, she walked to the window of the bridge and looked out at the swarm. We are human, she said. We are the species you thought was prey. We are the species the galaxy laughed at. We are the species that spent 50 years preparing for this moment. She paused. And you made a mistake coming to our galaxy. She turned back to her crew. All ships full offensive, show no mercy. The battle continued for 6 hours. The humans lost ships. They lost people. Lieutenant Myra Nam took a hit that destroyed her fighter, ejecting at the last second. A dozen warships were overwhelmed and consumed. But for every human that fell, a billion devourers died. And in the end, the swarm did something it had never done before. It retreated. The hive voice screamed in confusion and fear as the creatures fled back to the darkness between galaxies. They had come expecting to consume. They had found something they could not defeat. Speaker watched the swarm disappear. His crystal body flickered with colors he could not name. Relief, shame, awe. They saved us, he said. The humans, the prey animals, they saved us all. And watching from his own ship said nothing. For the first time in his ancient life, he had nothing to say. On the human flagship, Fleet Admiral sat down heavily in her chair. She was exhausted. They all were, but they had won. Doctor was crying, silent tears running down her old face. We did it, she said. After all these years, we did it. Nodded, we did, but it's not over. They retreated, but they're not destroyed. They'll come back stronger, smarter. Then we'll be ready. Looked out at the stars. Yes, she said, we will. The council laughed at Earth, then watched the galaxy fall. Part 5. The Galaxy Remembers. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Corridor. The galaxy was different now, changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Devourers had been pushed back to the darkness between galaxies, but they were not gone. Everyone knew they would return someday, and everyone knew who would be waiting for them. Human patrol ships moved along the outer rim of the galaxy, silent, watching, an eternal guard against the darkness. Other species had offered to help, to share the burden. The humans had accepted, but everyone knew who led that watch. The Galactic Assembly Chamber had been rebuilt, bigger, better, a symbol of unity in the face of destruction, and today, for the first time in a year, it was full again. Representatives from every surviving species had gathered, but this was not like the old meetings. There was no mockery, no laughter, only respect. And waiting. Ambassador Han walked down the same corridor that Lee had walked 50 years ago. She was young, only 32, chosen by Earth to represent humanity to the galaxy. She wore simple clothes, no medals, no decorations. She did not need them. Behind her walked Admiral, the hero of Corridor, the woman who had saved civilization itself. She walked in silence, her eyes taking in everything, remembering everything. The doors of the chamber opened. Everyone stood. Not because of tradition, not because of protocol, because they wanted to. 100 species rising to their feet as two humans entered the room. The sound of chairs moving, of bodies standing, filled the air like thunder. Speaker's crystal body glowed with colors of welcome and respect. Ambassador Han, Admiral, Earth's representatives are welcome in this chamber, now and always. Bowed slightly. Thank you, Speaker. We are honored to be here. She walked to the center stage, the same spot where Lee had stood, the same spot where he had been laughed at, but today no one was laughing. 1 year ago, the galaxy faced extinction. The Devourers came, and the greatest powers in the universe could not stop them. Fleets that had conquered 1,000 worlds fell in hours. Species that had lived for millions of years saw death approaching. She paused. And then Earth came. She looked around the chamber, at the faces of aliens who had once dismissed her people, at eyes that had once held contempt and now held something else. We could have let you fall, said. We remembered the laughter. We remembered the rejection. We remembered every word spoken in this chamber when Ambassador Lee asked for nothing more than friendship. Silence. But we chose differently. We chose to save. We chose to protect, not because we had forgotten, but because we remembered something more important than pain. We remembered who we wanted to be. She straightened her back. Earth does not ask for thanks. We do not ask for payment. We ask only for what we asked for 50 years ago: friendship, equality, a seat at this table. Speaker spoke. The Council has already voted, unanimously. Earth is not only welcome as a member of the Galactic Assembly, we ask that Earth lead the new Galactic Alliance. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Nodded slowly. We accept, but with conditions. Earth will not lead alone. We lead together or not at all, every species, every voice, equal. Agreed, said. A sound came from the back of the chamber. Movement. An ancient figure supported by 2 assistants slowly making his way forward. And the one who had laughed loudest 50 years ago, the one who had called humans prey animals. He stopped beforehand. His scales were white with age, his eyes were tired, but they were not proud, they were humble. Ambassador, he said, his voice weak but clear. I have lived for a very long time. I have seen many things. I have done many things, some good, some bad. But the thing I regret most is what I did to your ambassador in this very room 50 years ago. He lowered his head. I laughed at you, I called you prey. I said you would be forgotten. I was wrong. I was so wrong. He looked up at her. I cannot change the past. I cannot take back my words, but I can say this: I am sorry. My species is sorry. We were arrogant. We were cruel. And when the darkness came, it was you, the ones we mocked, who saved us all. Was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped forward and placed her hand on the old's shoulder. Ambassador Lee died 10 years ago, she said softly. But before he died, he told me what to say if this moment ever came. She smiled. He said to tell you that he forgave you a long time ago. He said that holding onto anger was like holding a burning coal. It only hurts the one holding it. He said that humans are not defined by how they are treated, but by how they treat others. A tear rolled down his ancient face. He was a better person than I ever was, he whispered. He was a better person than most of us, agreed. But he believed that anyone could be better. That's why he never gave up. That's why we never gave up. She turned to address the entire chamber. The galaxy is different now. We have all seen what happens when the darkness comes. We have all seen what we can achieve when we stand together. Let us not forget this lesson. Let us build something new, something better, together. The chamber erupted in agreement. 100 species, speaking 100 languages, all saying the same thing. Yes. Far from the chamber on Earth, a woman sat in a small garden. She was old, her hair silver, her face lined with years. Her name was Sara, and she was the daughter of Ambassador Lee. She had never traveled to the stars. She had spent her life on Earth, tending gardens, raising children, living quietly. But today she was watching the broadcast. The whole planet was watching. The moment when her father's dream finally came true. She looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, painting the clouds in shades of gold and orange. "They stopped laughing, Father," she whispered to the wind. "They finally stopped laughing." A tear rolled down her cheek, but she was smiling. In the darkness beyond the galaxy, the hive voice stirred. The swarm was healing, rebuilding, remembering. They had never been defeated before, never been turned back, never felt fear, but now they knew these things. The humans had taught them. The hive voice considered this new information, processed it, learned from it. The humans, it said to itself, to the billions of creatures that made up its body. We will remember the humans. We will study them. We will understand them. A pause. And one day we will return. But for now the darkness remained dark. The stars remained bright. And in the galaxy a new age was beginning. The age of unity. The age of hope. The age of humanity. On the rim, human ships continued their watch, patient, vigilant, ready. They had faced the darkness once and won. They would face it again if they had to, and again, as many times as necessary. Because that was who they were. That was what they had become. Not prey, not predators. Protectors. And the galaxy would never forget it.